think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Cowboy Bebop is the greatest anime ever made. You would find a lot of people out there that believe that statement. You would also find a lot that disagree. Some contrarians, yes, but it's hardly a stretch to say that there's better shows out there, even if you aren't one of the people that constantly complains Bebop is overrated. I don't even know if I would agree with the idea that this show is the best that anime has to offer, but there is one thing I'm certain about. Whether you believe Cowboy Bebop is the best anime or not, it is absolutely the most accessible. I don't really like anime, but I like Cowboy Bebop. I don't even think I can count the number of times I've heard this one. It's become so ubiquitous for me that even if someone wants to get into anime, Bebop is still the series I tell them to watch first. I've seen Asteroid Blues and Stray Dog Strut so many times just getting people started on this series that I'm almost sick of them. Almost. Bebop is the series that even people who hate anime can still enjoy. There's a lot of reasons this could be the case. Maybe it's because of the absolutely fantastic score by Yoko Kanno, probably the greatest anime composer out there. Maybe it's the likable characters, both regular and one-off. Maybe it's the setting. Maybe it's the episodic story, which rarely requires you to know what's going on and made it perfect for endless replay on Adult Swim's late-night block. Maybe it's the director, Shinichiro Watanabe's perfect blend of jazz and bebop with sci-fi to create a feeling impossible to match. Or maybe it's the impactful emotional writing that brings to life scenes that stay with you long after you finish whatever rewatch you're on. I don't know what quality makes Bebop so perfect, so accessible, so loved, but I can tell you one thing. The Cowboy Bebop Netflix series won't have it. Netflix recently announced that they were producing a live-action Cowboy Bebop series. Few details were known at first, and I was originally planning to talk about what was great about Bebop that would be impossible to recreate in a live-action space, but an article actually just came out a few days ago with details about the pilot for the series, so I'm going to focus on that. But first, I want to start with some of the more obvious reasons that this is a terrible idea. Live-action adaptations of anime have an absolutely abysmal track record. There's actually a shockingly large number of them that you've probably never even heard of. But for a whole host of reasons, anime does not translate well into 3D. Some adaptations have received praise, but overall, they're usually panned, especially the ones made in the West. Live-action adaptations of anime frequently make changes to the source material, either to shrink the series down to a manageable length, or just because they feel like it. They generally fail to match the tone and vision of the original series, because directing animation and directing live action is completely different, and superficial homages to shots from the original anime do not a successful adaptation make. Most of all, they are always completely unnecessary. In a way, it's understandable that some of these movies try to make changes to their source material. I mean, what's the point of just making a shot-for-shot remake of something just in live action? Do fans just want the same thing again, but with real people this time? I sure as hell don't. Hollywood has nearly a 100% failure rate for good live-action anime. Dragon Ball Evolution should really be the only thing I need to mention here, but lest we forget, Ghost in the Shell, Kite, Speed Racer, and Netflix's last attempt at adapting an anime, Death Note. A travesty of a series that completely fails to understand the characters, story, and themes of what it's adapting. So now here comes Netflix, hot off its last dumpster fire, to fuck up one of the most beloved anime of all time. A recent article posted on Splash Report went over the events of the leaked pilot of the Cowboy Bebop Netflix adaptation, and it doesn't look good. The article was posted by Jean-Francois Allaire, but the body of the article seems to be the account of somebody named Ludens, so that's who I'm going to be referring to. So, what do they have to say about their look at this pilot? Well, first off, surprising absolutely no one, they made Jet black. Whether or not you have a problem with this, it does give Netflix an excellent scapegoat to deflect criticisms of the series when it comes out, a topic I've talked about before. Although that didn't seem to work out for them so well with L and Deflix because of all the accusations of whitewashing. so maybe the narrative won't be as easy to control for this one. I don't particularly care, provided the character is written well. The problem with L was that he was nothing like his anime counterpart in terms of writing and personality, not just skin color. If they can keep Jet as Jet, and they don't force in some kind of space racism angle that was completely absent from his character in the anime, then I really don't have an issue with it. But that may be hoping for too much, because other parts of the leak indicate that Netboy Flixbop may well be woke. Ludens mentions a theme in the pilot of refugees, and it being sort of a poignant social commentary. But from what he says, it's just that there's an anti-refugee space priest or some such thing, and that makes it kind of hard to tell if he's reading a little further into it than the writers originally intended. One thing that does bother me is the apparent increase in edginess of Cownet B-Flix. Jet and Spike, quote, throw out F-bombs left and right, and the gore has also been turned up to some degree. Bebop is certainly not a kid-friendly series. There's violence, sexuality, and plenty of crime. But part of the charm of Bebop is that it was rarely gratuitous. Bebop is a mature series in the positive sense. It has a lot of moral ambiguity. The themes at play between characters, the world, and their pasts are ones that kids probably wouldn't relate to as well. Yes, violence and mature themes are part of it, but the kinds of stories in episodes like My Funny Valentine and Ganymede Elegy bear a greater impact for slightly older audiences. In addition to all of that, Bebop didn't always take itself particularly seriously. Episodes like Cowboy Funk are perfect proof of that. So going full grimdark and edgy doesn't seem to really fit a show that was lighthearted and funny at times. Bebop was not an edge fest full of exploding heads and fuck yous. Again, this could be handled in a good way, but the carefully crafted tone of the original series is one of its greatest successes. Would Roko be as likable if he was throwing out shits and motherfuckers every sentence? Or would that take away some of his innocent, nice guy personality that makes his story so much more emotional? I don't want to come off as a prude. I'm the last person that should ever take the moral high ground on bad language. I enjoy a good curse word. Tarantino and Scorsese are two of my favorite directors, but there's a time and a place for them in writing, and it has to be taken into account when adapting something. Now this next one is a huge sticking point for me. Apparently, in the pilot, there's a gun. That gun shoots black holes. Now, if you've ever watched Cowboy Bebop, you understand why this is a terrible fucking idea. The technology in Bebop is advanced, it's futuristic. Things like hypergates and how ships travel are never fully explained, but we know that this is a civilization advanced enough to colonize the solar system and terraform other planets. Weaponry, on the other hand, is still pretty much the same. People still use pistols and rifles. Rockets and grenades exist, but they're not much more advanced than anything in the present day. Even the spaceships don't get much more advanced than a lightning cannon on Spike's swordfish. Plus, all of these weapons have limitations. They need ammunition. Jet regularly complains about the money they waste when they use missiles, and the crew complains about how the cheap missiles they buy don't work right. Spike's swordfish can't just keep firing its lightning cannon over and over again because it drains the ship's power. Running out of fuel is a very real possibility. This world has limits. So now you're going to come into this fairly grounded sci-fi world and give us a fucking black hole gun? Well, that just throws everything out the fucking window now, doesn't it? How does it work? Does it have unlimited power? If the Bebop crew can afford one, why the fuck doesn't everyone have one? This is like hyperspace ramming in The Last Jedi. It just fucks up all of the established rules of combat in a series for the sake of doing something cool. The pilot episode is reported to be about an hour long and is sort of an extended version of Asteroid Blues, the first episode of the anime, with this version introducing both Vicious and Faye. It's here that Ludens mentions a key concern with this pilot: there's too much, too early. More than anything, what makes me think this article is a bit of spin is that this is sort of glossed over. The pacing of Bebop is one of the best things about it. The actual story of Bebop, if you could even really call it that, only really covers 5 or 6 episodes. It's thought of as a plot because it spans the series and focuses on Spike, who is most arguably the main character, and it is the story we deal with in the final few episodes. That being said, there are plenty of episodes surrounding Faye, Jet, and Edward's backstories that I think are just as central to the series, And to cast aside Speak Like a Child or Hard Luck Woman as being unessential to the show would be a huge disservice to the show that I hope Bowflex NetPeep avoids. To give at least some credit to Ludens, he does bring up reservations about cramming Vicious into the first episode. Vicious is the closest thing the series has to a main villain, and having him slowly built up after we've had time to get comfortable with these characters is part of what makes him so intimidating. The difference between Spike normally and Spike when he's dealing with his past involving Vicious, Julia, and the Red Dragon Syndicate carries more weight when you've seen how Spike acts towards people across a number of adventures. Ludens does go so far as to bring up Toys in the Attic, a horror-themed episode where the crew tracks down some unknown, unnatural stowaway. It's episodes like this that are key to the series, by giving characters a chance to breathe and letting us take a break away from the seriousness to enjoy seeing how they react to new situations. I know a lot of people hate it, but my favorite episode of Breaking Bad was Fly, for that exact same reason. It gives us time to see the characters interacting with each other outside of that structured story sense. Mushroom Samba is a fun episode from Bebop that gets a lot of flack, probably because it's sandwiched between Black Dog Serenade and Speak Like a Child, and those are really serious and well-remembered episodes, but it serves a similar purpose to Fly. And I certainly don't think it deserves some of the hate I see it get. Ludens tries to downplay this point. Credit where credit's due, he does bring it up, but I don't know that he gives it the weight that it deserves. This is a possible series-wrecking issue, and he finishes the article by saying Newt Flute Coop Boop is on its way to being something spectacular. It just has a few issues to iron out before production. I wouldn't call fundamentally misunderstanding the pacing and charm of the original series a small issue to be ironed out. And I think more than anything, fucking with the story structure and tone will be what alienates fans of the original. Imagine if this adaptation were to only focus on Spike's story, Ballad of the Fallen Angels, Jupiter Jazz Parts 1 and 2, The Real Folk Blues. How much of the quality of this series are we leaving out by doing that? Honestly, thinking about it, I think this could turn into a bit of a Last Jedi situation. Unlike the abomination that is Netflix, it seems like the writers for Netflix Bebop are at least familiar with the source material. And while they may end up completely misfiring on tone, pacing, characters, world, music, direction, and the comfiness of the original series, that doesn't necessarily mean what they'll put out will be bad when judged on its own merit. It could end up being a good series that a lot of people would actually like. It might be a well-produced, well-directed, well-acted, dare I say, entertaining series that bears a passing similarity to Cowboy Bebop. But it won't be Bebop. But then again, could it ever be? I think if the people heading this show have at least some kind of understanding of what makes Bebop good, why people love it, they might be able to create a reinterpretation, sort of their own vision, using the characters and themes and, the idea of Bebop. And they might be able to make something good. It's not going to be Bebop. It's not going to be what I want it to be. It's not going to be what a lot of people want it to be. But it might be something good. If it decides to be its own thing, and it's a quality reinterpretation, maybe that'd be okay. But if they pull some Battle Angel shit and make Ein CGI, I'm going to fucking